All right, continuing from where we left off implementing some tests for our SQLite to-do list service, and we were questioning how the on-conflict stuff works. There's actually two types of on-conflict. There's one that you can apply to constraints directly, like this example, this on-conflict ignore, which applies to this not null constraint. And we were using on-conflict fail, so in theory we could do something like that on a constraint. But the other kind that we were actually trying to use on our insert statement, you can really only do on-conflict, do, and then either nothing or update. So that's used for upserts, not necessary to try to fail when doing insertions. So by default, this is going to fail if we have a conflict with one of our primary keys. In fact, we can demonstrate that just by copy pasting this and say test add conflict. I guess I'll call it create conflict since we're calling the create method. So if I basically just call this same method twice in a row, then this second one's going to throw an exception. In fact, I should wrap this, I guess. Assertions dot, there should be something about throws in here. Assert throws, maybe. Yeah, there's some assert throws. We're expecting a runtime exception currently. And the code that causes it to be thrown is that. We don't actually need these braces. Alright. And actually I can say I don't know what the message is off the top of my head, but let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so we did get an exception, failed to create list, and yeah, so it basically has this primary key constraint error in it. So if I copy this, I can say assert true, not contains something like that. Now really at some point we're going to want to throw our own exception so that our REST endpoints know how to handle it. In fact, let's go ahead and implement that. Now let's add a new package here. We'll call it conflict. We'll need a serial version UID. Let's add some constructors. We really only need a message constructor. I'll just add that one. What's this complaining about? Oh, at serial. Okay, so now we have an explicit exception type. Let's come down here and catch that. Now, potentially e.get message might be null. You can say something like that. This is currently exception. Let's make it a runtime exception. There's definitely pros and cons about checked exceptions versus unchecked exceptions, like we're doing with runtime exception. I prefer the lazy route, kind of like I'm doing here, and just making it a runtime exception, unchecked, and then we can verify it here. And then our message can actually be equal something like that. All right. So that's looking good. The next thing let's create test for is this get all. So we got a bunch of individual gets. Actually, let's add one more get. We have one with list, or get with one list. Let's add multiple lists and just verify we only get the one we requested back. All right, and now let's start these some get all tests. So it's going to be similar to pretty much all of these. All right, get all with no lists. Get all with the wrong principal. So we're adding this list as principal 1. If we get all here, our list should still be empty because that one's for the other user. Get all. Okay, now this one doesn't really apply because we're not passing an ID in. So I'll go ahead and delete that one. Get all with one list. So our list should have one in it, and that one should be equal to this list that we inserted. And if we effectively do the same thing here, we're going to have 2 in it. Now this is a little bit tricky because we're not doing any kind of sorting, and really we should. So when we get all, let's order by name. So now we know for sure that the first one we get back is going to be name 1, and the second one we get back is going to be name 2. So this get 0 and get 1 should work correctly. All right, so that's get all. Let's go ahead and run all these. The next method is the create method. All right, bunch of greens. So for creates, we already have one, which is on conflict. We're using text, so we're not going to have a database problem if our ID is really big or if our name is really big. We'll add validation on that stuff in our REST endpoint. So we'll ignore validation here. Yeah, we'll come back to validation in a future video. So for now, obviously we're calling create kind of in all the methods. So for our create tests, we only need kind of abnormal situations. Like doing a create with a conflict is one situation. Another situation is when only the names are different. So it should still be a conflict because the name isn't part of the primary key. I'll say different name. So yeah, we'll call this list 1 and list 2. Name 1 and name 2. So So we'll do 1 here and then 2 here. So we should still get an error because the primary key will still conflict. All right. Off the top of my head, that's all the create issues we might have. For update, we'll have similar. Well, we're not going to have conflicts. So we can do an update where the one we're trying to update is missing. So we're not going to do an insert. We'll assert false. To-do list service dot update principal 1. I just thought of another create one that we can test. I'll come back to that. So we want to do an update with our list that doesn't exist. That should return false because we didn't actually modify anything. Let's come back up here. Let's do create conflict but different user. So we can make these exactly the same. We'll do an insert list 1 as principal 1, insert list 2 as principal 2. This shouldn't cause any conflicts. And if we do gets, like this one, we should be able to get both back. So both of those should be present. All right, back to updates. We'll run all these in a minute. So if we update and it's missing, we should get a false back. If we update and it exists, but it's exactly the same, we should still get a false back. And because of this name check at the end, we should still get a false back. So let's test update, different name. So I'll do set name here. And then we'll do an update, so that should return true. And then if we fetch it, then we should get, well, it should be, oops, hold on. It should be present, first of all, and then it should be equal to our updated list. Like that. All right, let's go ahead and run all these. All right, all greens. Now we should be able to, it should be treated as missing if we try to update from a different user. So if we, let's actually copy those two. So if we insert as list as principal 1 and then we update as principal 2, that should still be false. And the one that we fetch should not be modified. Well, I guess we didn't actually change anything, so it will never be modified. Let me update this list. And then when we fetch it, it should be true, and then we can assert equals name has not been modified. All right, so that's probably sufficient for updates. let's do some deletions. So if we attempt to delete one that's missing, it should return false. If we try to delete one that was created for a different user, that should also be false. What else? I guess successful deletion. Now, I guess I should do a fetch here just to make sure. I'll do a fetch here also. Successful deletion. Alright, let's run everything again. Alright, looks good. Last thing we'll test is truncate with some lists inserted. We'll do a truncate with none in there. That should be 0. Alright, we'll run everything one last time. There we go, all greens. So we basically just spent a whole video implementing unit tests for, or I should say integration test, for our database to-do list service. Offline, I'll do the to-do item service. It's not going to be that different. It's only going to be slightly different because we have list ID in here, so we need to do some things for specific lists. So I'll implement that offline. I'll implement the service offline. I'll implement the test offline, and then we'll come back and continue on in the next one. All right, that's it. Thanks a lot. Bye.